Okay, so I'm making this video now because I feel a certain urge to talk about the justice system and what I feel they're most doing wrong. I'm going to look at R. Kelly as an example.
Clary, who is now 23 years old, says Kelly abused her verbally and physically for years.
I'm going to look at the case of Jeffrey Epstein.
The fact that this man is not in jail or not dead is very confusing to me. These are the only two options for this man. Andrew, he needs to go through one of these two situations because you are somebody who's been accused of multiple situations with minors. The Met Police not willing to investigate is not surprising to me. The Met Police are directly tied into the royal family, directly tied into the press. They all work together to protect each other at this point of time. The Met Police are pathetic.
And I'm going to look at this sort of Asian cult where some guy had kind of brainwashed a whole bunch of people into believing that he was some sort of messiah, but was just using this as a way of getting sex from people.
I'd never seen him in person, so I didn't have anything in my own experience to go by to reassure me that he was a trustworthy person. I was just completely believing what other people had told me.
They told us that he was in prison because he was being persecuted and falsely accused. So some of the things that were given to me in the group included this double photo frame. So there's Jesus and then there's the leader of the group, Jung, and we prayed to images like this. The next item is a necklace that all the evergreens were given. So the people who were supposed to dedicate their lives to Jong only and not get married. And that was me. We were explained that the 3 pearls and just the way that they're placed is meant to signify a vagina. So,
why do you think that was a symbol?
Because Jung is woman obsessed and he's sex obsessed. Yeah.
We were encouraged to write letters to the leader. I would often write to him about how difficult things were for me at home, all the tension and conflict that was happening in my family.
Sarah, Australia. Nice to meet you. I know that it's hard, but go to church. Don't let your parents know about it though. To Sarah. I read your letter and saw the photo of the beach. It made me feel warm. Treat the Lord like he is next to you. Sarah, are you well? The Holy Son has given the gospel to Australia and he has preached the gospel through me. In this room, I feel like I'm in your warm bosom and your embrace of love.
My head leader was telling me to write to him like he was my husband or like he was my lover, and he would write back in the same way. He asked me to send a photo of myself, to him, and we were encouraged to be in a bikini or, a lot of makeup on, really pretty. Some of the letters were quite intimate. So he'd say things like, women are much more beautiful when they're naked, and he said my white skin arouses him. He asked me to visit him in Korea, so I visited him in prison. So we got a 15-minute visit with him. He knew me by name from when I stepped in the room, so he'd obviously seen my photos. And he said to me through letters that, he would stroke our photos on the wall of his cell. At the end, he just blew kisses and left.
These girls are kind of primed to think they're about to meet the Messiah and this is the most wonderful opportunity. And that he's innocent and it's so unfair that he's in jail. He was persecuted just like Jesus was.
I'm also going to talk about the postal service and how there was faults in the system that did wrong calculations, making it look like money suddenly went missing when the right calculations started showing up. But for 20 years, the companies and courts involved all blamed the people who were working on the computers at the time rather than the computers.
We are on it, Rishi Sunak declared today, as he sought to reassure the hundreds of sub-postmasters who were wrongly convicted of defrauding the post office in the Horizon scandal that he would speed up the process of quashing their convictions and making sure they get full compensation. This evening, a minister is in the Commons to update MPs on the government's plans to deal with the miscarriage of justice. The Post Office has apologised to all those affected.
Varchaz Patel's father, Vipin, was charged with stealing £75,000 from the Post Office and convicted of fraud in 2011.
I got my life back.
I'm not a criminal anymore.
It's been bloody hard.
I wish I'd known then what we all know now. The Post Office was lying on an industrial scale. To me, and other ministers. And when I met Alan Bates and listened to his concerns, I put those concerns to the officials in my department, to the Post Office, to the National Federation of Postmasters. And it's clear they all were lying to me.
I'm not prepared on behalf of the Post Office.
I've got my answer, so you won't...
No, you haven't got your answer. You haven't heard a yes or a no. I'm simply saying that at the moment I'm not able to answer your question.
I'm going to look at all these cases and I'm going to say that they all have something in common, which is that for all these cases, people seem to take sides. And right now, again, in the postal scandal thing, they're still doing the same mistakes that they did back then, which was that they're determined to try and find, a criminal or someone to prosecute. Trying to think whether they should blame the courts or whether they should blame the people who made the system and whether or not they knew if there was faults in the system. On the news they were saying, or should they blame the people who ignored the fact that these people were saying that the system's wrong because it actually was wrong. But it happened for 20 years, so they don't know who to blame because a lot of these cases were dealt by different people over a long period of time. So, they're struggling now to put the blame on someone because they want to take sides still, and they don't know whose side to take rather than just see that actually it was probably a societal thing that have made all these problems. So many people want to have an abuser and a victim. With the postal scandal thing, people wanted to believe that the victims were the people of this company who were losing out on lots of money, and they wanted to believe that the abusers were the people at the bottom who were working on the computer at the time. So courts took sides and weren't willing to look at all the evidence or think about other possibilities. But now that they know that these people were actually innocent and it was just mistakes in the system, they now want to try and, again, find an abuser because they now feel like, well, these are all the victims, so who are the abusers responsible for this? And yeah, I think by trying to take sides, they kind of forget that the people who are victims would probably been an abuser if they were working at the top levels, because there is a sort of distrust between people, Some people are saying, I didn't steal this money, other people are saying, we don't believe you. Now, if the situation was different and if the people who are being accused of stealing the money were actually working at the top, would they do exactly the same thing by saying, I don't believe you, I do think you did take it. I'm watching the Traitors episodes and they're very good, and it is a reminder of that because it's the same thing, everyone's trying to work out who the traitors are, but in reality no one knows who the traitors are, and so they're just trying to think up all the reasons why someone is a traitor and why they aren't. And you know what, they're getting it wrong all the time because people keep wanting to pick sides rather than realize that actually if you don't know the truth, you can fall under the same faults of believing things that aren't the truth. In the Traitors show, there were traitors, but in reality sometimes it's not about traitors but rather just mistakes made. Now, how much of a mistake it was, or did they know it was a mistake, there's so many different variables. It's not just, are you a traitor or not? I think this cult group that this Asian guy had is an example of that, because there was a huge number of people that believed that he really was the Messiah, hence also believed that doing sexual things with him was actually a way of curing themselves or getting blessed by God. They generally believed this.
I've just messaged and they have agreed to meet at Seoul train station.
3 senior cult members were there to greet us. Taking charge was a woman who calls herself the promotional director. It's fair to say that we didn't trust them and they didn't trust us.
Well, that was an hour and a half of Providence propaganda, including things that they've given us to read. We got lectured on Christianity, the Bible. But the thing that hits you the most is they don't have a skerrick of empathy for the victims.
The thing that hits me about these reporters is that it is quite a biased story because they seem to have taken a side, and most things or everything seems to be angling at how the occult is bad and that these people are victims, and even calling them victims and always referring to them as victims, I feel like doesn't show the right picture, because I've listened to these cases and these women, they were groomed. They were definitely groomed.
1 group Bible study a week became 2, and then one-on-one lectures were introduced. Amy felt heard, she felt respected, and it felt good.
The love bombing and things like this that they do, that the way that they make you feel very accepted and very chosen as well, it all it fed me in a very big way, I think. And I don't think there's many people in this world that don't appreciate that kind of attention and love.
Part of the grooming process is for them to believe that they're not victims, that this is the truth. On one hand, they were abused, but on the other hand, they kind of put themselves in this position. You know, if you watch the cases, you'll hear the sort of grooming tactics of them being given jewelry, saying, you know, this represents the vagina. The guy's in prison for rape, but it's all unfair and it's not true, you know. So these women, in one hand, were actually participating in their own abuse because they were believing stupid things. You know, it is stupid to believe this. If you tell the same story in a different way, people might see, well, this seems stupid. What, there's a man in prison who's accused of rape, and you're writing love letters to him, and he's writing love letters to you, and you're just going along with it, you know. On one hand, you could see these women as victims.
So when these groups set up retreats, isolating members from their families, from old friends, they're trying to manipulate them and control them in an environment that they dominate.
Or on the other hand, you can see them as stupid idiots that were believing stupid things. You know, Christianity is a religion for morons because it says stupid things in it, such as God sent his son down to die for the world, and through his death people live and are saved. And this happened 2,000 years ago, and people are all saved now, even though people are clearly not saved now. You know, I would say that Christianity is a cult. It's a cult where people have been brainwashed into believing things that are incorrect. Nonsense. And I think you would have to be quite stupid to believe a lot of the things in Christianity. And this cult is nothing more than just a diversion of Christianity, only they actually have a physical leader that likes sex. And okay, these women were very gullible and foolish, but at the time they were being abused, they actually believed the nonsense. Hence, it wouldn't have been a type of abuse for them. They would have seen it as a type of them being saved. You know, it's wrong for this guy to lie, and he definitely does deserve to be in prison because he's a risk to the public. But it's also a societal problem, because the main issue isn't actually the guy at the top. The main issue is all the people around who are happy to put this guy at the top, who are happy to support him, who are happy to back him up, who are happy to, you know, say lots of positive things about